At this time, I'll call this budget goals work session to order, and I'll ask Commissioner Morse to give us our invocation, please.
Madam Chair. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege of meeting here today to do the county's business. We ask that you give us strength, guidance, and wisdom as we make decisions for the people of the county. I ask that you bless the folks in Eastern Europe who are under the siege of the communists and deliver them. We ask you to lead, guide, and direct us as we go forward. In your most gracious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ask for approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item 1 is the Commissioner's priorities for the budget for 22-23. Shannon, do you want to start us off?
Well, basically what we're looking for here is just for you all to give us something to start on as far as we're going to start the budget process soon and send out budget packets to department heads. We receive those back, we'll start looking at the budget and present a budget to you the last meeting in May. We'd just like to kind of know from you all some guidance on what you'd like to see in that budget, anything that you're thinking of as far as capital projects, tax discussion, things like that. And then we've got some updates as far as on, Julia's got some sales tax updates, and I've got some state grant funding project discussion I'd like to have later in the meeting and budget discussion as well. But if you all can just kind of give us some feedback on what you're thinking forward on and what you'd like to see in the budget.
Okay.
Help us with our planning.
All right. Anybody want to volunteer to lead us off with their goals or priorities if they have a list or ideas?
I'll start off, that's fine. Biggest thing I want to see right now is I know with the inflation and everything going up, I don't want to see a tax increase. If there's any way we can work this budget without doing that, be a high goal of mine, has been the past 3 times. I know we're working on getting started on this courthouse, looking at how we can see fitting that in, getting it taken care of as quickly as possible. And also another high priority, just been the same thing since been in, is the internet, getting that taken care of, and hopefully we can nail something in and get it actually taken care of this time.
Okay. Commissioner
Hey,
Moore.
Madam Chair. I'm the same with Andy on those 3. I don't want to see a tax increase in this budget. We need to get moving on the planning for courthouse. On the internet, I'd like to see us, well, what's the status of the American Rescue Plan funds? Did we get the second tranche yet?
No.
We're going to, right?
We will get the second pot. That's another 4.4.
You know when? You know when?
No, I think the summer, maybe June or
summer.
July. Yeah.
It's estimated, but
Oh,
you never
okay.
know.
And we've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings on those and have determined that those can be used as matching funds and as far as grant funds to match some kind of internet funding.
Okay. Well, on the internet, then I would like to spend, my top priority for American Rescue Plan funding would be internet. And so if we can do it during this session, I wouldn't mind to see us take a shot at trying to budget that ARP funding. We're going to get all of it and maybe put a contingency budget together for it or priorities or somehow do that. I think we've got to look at the animal shelter. I think that's a top priority from a capital standpoint. And then what we're doing with the elections office, I think we started some discussion on that, but I think we probably need to do some more groundwork on what that should look like and where it should be and how much it's going to cost to do that piece of the courthouse upgrade. Not sure if there's I don't remember what our budget status is for reworking the Greenbox site in Walnut Cove. I don't know if that's in the budget, I can't remember, but if we're still going to try to, I think I heard Stuart say we were going to stay at the same location.
Yeah, I've got some updates on that, and I can do it now if you want to.
Yeah, be
talk about
fine.
it or later.
I prefer you to do it later.
Okay.
Okay,
We
later.
talk about those pressures.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Then we've got water and sewer issues in Danbury that we've had some discussion on. Another possible use of, I guess, of the American Rescue Plan funding. I haven't had any discussions with anybody on the school board about what they're thinking. One thing I'd like to kind of see, I think both from the county side and from the school side, is a pretty thorough accounting of all the COVID money that we spent, that they spend and we spent. So we kind of get a big picture look at where we stand with COVID money in general. And so we can figure out how to integrate that into what we do in our budget. I'd like to see I'd like for y'all, maybe next time we meet on this or at some meeting, put together something fairly simple, but an overview of a tax rate comparison, looking at our property tax rates compared to like counties, just to see. Well, we've got like 66 cents plus 8 cents fire tax. I think that's all of it, right? And including the 4-cent fund at 66 plus 8. So I'll be.
That just counties our size.
Yeah, just counties our size, just like count. Let's use the same counties you use for comparisons on other things, population or however you want to select that. I'm just kind of curious of how we stand with other counties like us. And then if you could put get HR to put a turnover rate for last calendar year together, personnel turnover, so we can see how that's comparing to the prior year. That's all I have.
All right. Commissioner Mendenhall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I've started off my priorities each year, this is my 6th year. And my first one is, well, most of the ones that I was going to give have been taken, but my first one always is not to increase taxes, no tax rates. That's always my first one. I would like for our fund balance to stay around 20%. Our fund balance, I went back on June 30th, it was 20.7, June 30th of 2021, I think it was 20.17%. I think it'll probably be a little higher this time, I'm not sure. But I think that's what, I had it written down and brought my notebooks and everything, and it was 20.17%.
Y'all's locations about this. All right, cool.
I'd like to keep it in the, I see where it's saying estimated as of 2/16, 22.42%. So, that's better than what I usually say. I'm usually in a 20% range, but 22.42% is our estimated fund balance as of February 16, 2022. I definitely want to see the courthouse taken care of, and I mean, we all know that is not an option. I mean, we are going to work with the judicial system on this. However, we know that in the end, they could mandate that. So, hey, let's work with them and get it right the first time around. I travel all over the county now that I'm retired. I'm getting a lot of feedback on the green box site in Want Cove. And I passed that along to Shannon about a month or two ago. And I think she has been in contact with Perry Peterson on that, and to see if it's a viable option to improve it, but keep it where it is.
Right.
improvement, but keep it where it's at. Because the last place that was brought up to us to possibly move it, I think if you remember that, I rode that twice out and like got hit the first time I tried to get out of that road. So I felt like we were going, if we were going to put it there, we were going to be exchanging a dangerous situation for another dangerous situation. I just didn't see how that could help us in it. Also, the internet is a big thing for me. And it goes back a few years, and we're in a situation where I continually, as I go throughout the county, get asked about why the unserved that I go to, because I travel from Francisco and Westfield all the way over to Germantown and in between. That's brought up all the time. And I'll just give you a prime example. My stepson lives on East Road in Warren County. He doesn't have it. He's a teacher. Without it. And so the situation is the American Rescue Plan money. I think we've got what, $8 or $9 million total, but four in two pots of four or something.
8.8.
Yep. Okay. Nobody should be able to sit here at this table and tell me that we cannot find a solution of using some of that ARP money to help us out with this internet broadband situation. I mean, that's just, I'm sorry. If you go around some of those curves up to North Stokes, I could understand it, because I was principal there 7 years. I'm going to tell you, when you own a road in Walnut Cove, and it's got no, in my opinion, big obstacles. Like, I know he's brought up rocks and things of that thing before, but here we got a road that has none of that. And we got a teacher at West Stokes, and he can't get internet. Now, something's just not right here. And I'm pushing on that too. So the green box site in Walnut Cove, of course, what we got going on from Danbury to Meadows, that
Water, sewer.
Yep. And the courthouse, and keeping the fund balance. If it's 22.42% right now, I like to keep it around 20 at least, and that's good. Thank you, Julia, for having that. And as always, first thing, and I'll close out and we can start. Y'all can have y'all's time, but it's absolutely no tax increase on my end. I can't vote for a tax raise. I will not vote for a tax raise. That's all I got. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you,
Vice
Madam
Chair.
Chair. Thank you. Just to reiterate some of the other commissioners, my part, absolutely no tax rate. A lot of folks forget, as being a commissioner, we pay taxes as well too. And I don't like paying more taxes myself, so, I think we can control that by the budget. One big thing I always told, guys in the fire service when I served as fire commissioner, and I think the department heads in the county need to look at it the same way. When you do a budget, put in there what you need, not what you want. I see that a lot. And a big thing too, as far as budgets go, if you're looking down the road, a big capital thing or a big project thing in your department, you ought to be able to see that within a 3-year period. Commissioners ought to have a fourth hand on it. Say, well, this is what they're going to do in the next 3 years, So that way you got some kind of goal to go as far as your budget goes. And the internet, I hear it all over the county. I actually heard it a lot before I ever became county commissioner. People really want the internet service, and I understand. I'm just blessed where I live, where I've got it, and I hate it for the folks that don't, but hopefully we can get the ball rolling on this thing. And I think once we get started, we need to kind of nail them down to a date instead of just letting this thing just keep dragging on and on and on. I know River Street has done a lot of work across the county, but I think we need to say, all right, give us a deadline of when you think this stuff's going to be up and going. That way we get some kind of feedback. We can tell the citizens when we're asking, I hate to sit there and look at somebody and say, well, I really don't know. I really don't know. That's not an answer that citizens are looking for. The animal shelter, I was over there last week, just kind of walked around and looked at it. Yeah, I'm like Commissioner Barnes, that's going to be an issue for us, there's no doubt. Don't know if that's the right location to build it back at, but we definitely need to be looking at that. And as Commissioner Mendenhall said on the courthouse, yeah, that's an issue that's coming. We're going to have to do it. We don't have a choice. And I want to make a statement about the courthouse while I'm on it, because I've had some phone calls about the courthouse, the lower part of this courthouse getting shut down. And of course, we got blamed for that. We, when I say commissioners, but I've got a paper and I want everybody to, be more happy to stop by my house. I'll be glad to show it to you. That was signed by a judge, not us, to shut the lower part of the courthouse down. That was for safety reasons, and that's why it was done. I think, February the 8th was when she signed that order.
February 9th administrative order.
Okay. So I just want all the citizens to understand that was not done by us. This was done by a judge, so we have to honor what she says. So, and on the fund balance, yes, I'd like to see it stay at 20%. And I don't know about the green box site up Pinnacle, if anything is going to be done. I know we talked about that as far as the safety of people getting in and out. I know we're not going to move it, but I think that's something we got to get back to with DOT and see if they're going to do something there on that part to make everybody safe getting in and out of there. And that's all I got.
All right, thank you. Well, I think that we've been fortunate that we have had this money, this American Rescue funds to come in, and that's going to help us with this broadband situation. I think our sales tax revenue has been up, and that's been a good thing, but I think we can credit part of that to the infusion of money from the federal government as far as stimulus money and that kind of thing, and it has had a positive effect on our sales tax, although COVID has put a very negative impact on our economy. I think in the way of labor market reductions and our employees, some burnout from EMS and stuff, but I think our ability to adjust the pay scale when we did has helped that quite a bit. And I think I'd be interested in the turnover rate, as Commissioner Morris mentioned, but I think that's probably offset the potential loss of employees that we could have seen. So I think that's a good thing. I think we're going to have some challenges on the expenditure side of this due to inflation. I mean, if what happens in Russia could affect our gas prices here. I was listening to them, never know if you can believe the media, but what they said about it could double gas prices, and that'll affect the school system. It would affect us. So being cognizant of all of that, we have to, in this budget, I think, be really mindful of it and careful to, to not overspend and to plan carefully what we're going to do. But I think that for this budget anyway, this American Rescue Funds is going to help us out, but we can't depend on that. It's not going to be here, but I think it can help us do some good things. So one of my priorities would be this broadband. I think that affects digital literacy. I think we can accomplish that this year and really make a big dent in it. We've talked about it, but in all honesty, it's probably good that we delayed it, because now we have a chance to get this state money as well as this American Rescue money, and we can really do something big, I think, in that way and help, because I agree it was a shame that you've got teachers and students too that don't have the internet. And so that's something we've got to really look at. And this water and sewer issue in Danbury, I think some of this money that we can do, because it's a shame when you've got, pipes busting over here and the jail doesn't have water and we're having to bring water in. I think now's a good time to fix all that. And so that would be a priority for me. The courthouse expansion, I think some people will look at that and say, oh, you just built it. But if you look in there, the thing on the wall says either 1982 or 83, that building, 86. So, it's been there a while, and it is out of space. As far as the Board of Elections, I think Shannon's got something to share with us today that could possibly work in keeping them where they're at, and helping them out. And I think Perry's looked at redesigning that bottom. I mentioned the part that wasn't utilized of that lower lobby. I think he's come back and revamped that, so maybe Board of Elections could stay there. But so that's a priority. I don't know what exactly the Board of Education is going to have for us. That's, you never know what to expect, right? I've been on that side. So, they've got some pretty tough decisions. If you look at that not facility study, but the information they share with us about their population study, they've got some really tough decisions to make. And I don't know what that's going to look like for sure, but at some point they will come knocking on our door about some capital projects, I feel sure. And so, we just need to have our budget in shape where I'd like to help them all we can, but keeping this tax rate as low as possible. And with this budget, no tax increase. I agree with the 4 other commissioners on that. No tax increase, and definitely keeping that fund balance up around 20%. The animal shelter, I feel like, is a priority. I think, like you said, we're going to be in sad shape with that soon. It's already kind of sad, actually. So we got to look at that. I'd like to see us go ahead and demo the old prison. I think that's something we could probably accomplish this year that we put off last year, and go ahead and do that. So I think that's a prime location for something to come in possibly in the future. So if we have the money right now, we should go ahead and get that site ready by demoing that building. I think that's all I have.
I want to re-echo that, Madam Chair, I had that in my mind, but I didn't have it on paper.
Right.
And that's the prison demolition.
Mm-hmm.
We can, I think, put that to very good use. And so whoever's taking notes at the table, add my name to Commissioner Cox's name on the prison situation.
There was already quotes on it, wasn't there?
Yep.
There probably had to be re-quoted now.
Right. And I don't think you can overlook economic development as far as any time you have revenue generating expenditures. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money. You know how that goes. But that should be a priority as well, is what we can do to impact our economic development and tourism as well. All right. So there you have our goals, and we'll let you report some information to us.
And Chair, could I add one thing before
Yes,
she
go ahead.
starts?
Go ahead.
I'd agree with you guys on the 20% for the fund balance, try to keep it 20%. One thing I thought I've overlooked is if the sheriff requests body cams for his people, I would support that, if you want to tell him ahead of time, when he puts his budget together. I don't know if he's going to or not, but if he did, I would support.
So I don't know where they're at with the budget process, but.
Yeah, I would support it if he did. On the schedule for the internet, the proposals we've got will have schedules in them, so the minute we get that evaluated and out there, we'll be able to tell the public, I think, what the schedule's gonna be. And I think it has to be fairly quick because of the money requirements of spending the money, right?
Yeah, and the April 4th deadline for the state
Yeah.
grant money from the DIT office.
Yeah, and so,
And to spend that money is by 2026 is what the ARPA money has. But some of that's a little bit different on the state, the DIT funding once the project started. But most of them are going to be within a couple of years anyway on the timeline.
yeah, and while we're working over in Meadows doing stuff over there, I would like to at least consider putting the animal shelter over there close to that other pet facility as a possible location.
Just in response to the sheriff's office,
Oh, I have.
they got state money through the budget of over $80-some thousand to spend on sheriff operations. So
Okay.
we've already got the thing I had to sign off on about it, so just,
Okay.
that'll probably be some of his revenues in his budget.
Okay. That's good. All right.
Julia, do you want to start and take the sales tax in the order we've got it, and then I'll take all the capital projects, the current things, state stuff.
In your agenda packet, I put last year's sales tax and this year's sales tax so far through December. Just so you can review, we are up over last year, this year so far. General funds 13.90, schools 12.66, and the fire departments are also, and just to let you know how we're coming in on the sales tax. It looks like we're still up from last year, so it's still coming in good.
What was the fire? You gave us the general schools, and just tell us those numbers again.
The numbers you just said, the general sales tax and the fire, what you just called out, the numbers, 13.90.
Yeah, if you look on the sheet, it's we're 13.90% above last year. General fund, 12.66 on school. King Fire's up 14.45. Mill Hall 17.99. County Code 13.62, and Service District 11.36 over last fiscal year at December.
Okay.
And if you look over to the other side under the budget, we're 57.43% collected on general funds sales tax. I try to show what we collected of the budget too, so.
What's the 59.9%? Is the one that's on the very last page,
My readers in the car.
up at the upper right-hand
That's
corner?
overall.
That's total everything.
That's all the funds.
All sales tax. We're 59% collected.
Overall is up 13.53, and it's 59.90% of the budgets that are budgeted for the general fund, school, and the fire departments.
That's for half a year, so we're
Yeah.
9% over half collected. Okay.
Any questions? Questions on that? Okay, Avalon, I had Rick to give me some figures on estimated value. Now, they are still keying in stuff, and he said he would give me a monthly update every month. But I told him I just kind of needed something to kind of give y'all a little estimate of what. And so I have attached these sheets for the general fund, the school current expense, and the 4 cent, I call it 4 cent new school tech, site tech. F-Tech fund. And this is based, our collection rate for taxes is 98.21, which went up from last year. I had a note of how much now, I don't know what I did with my,
It was 97 for something last year.
and so what the value I got right now, you would get additional $593,164 in general fund and school fund from Avalon.
Could you repeat those
And
numbers?
then you get additional,
For school fund, what was the additional?
For school fund. what
School
was the-
fund, what was the additional?
a 4-cent fund would be 76,537. Now, from the motor vehicles, you're gonna get additional 155,258 for general and school, and then the 4-cent fund, you're gonna get additional 20,034. I didn't add those two together, sorry.
There was, you gave us a 590-something thousand additional,
It's on this sheet.
Okay.
Yellow,
okay,
it's 593.
3, okay, I see it now,
And then 155,258 is the motor vehicle increase.
okay.
That's for the general fund and the school fund. And then the 4-cent fund, it's 76,537 and 20,034 for the motor vehicles. But that just kind of gives you an estimate. Like I said, these are gonna be changing because they're still keying in stuff, he said down there. And, he's gonna give me a monthly update. Give me a monthly update for next month. Anyway.
1 cent's $465,900 and something dollars. Budget purposes.
It's 194,412 on 4-cent fund. 1 cent, a penny.
465 includes that.
Huh?
465 include that.
All right.
Do you have anything else? Do you have anything else?
Yeah, debt service.
Thank you.
I give you a debt service schedule as of February the 16th. Now, this shows you what debts, how many years we still have to pay on what debt and how much it is. This does not, on the Nancy rental, the second page, this does not show the decrease in interest. Andrew and them still working on that for me. But we do, there was a question about, this will be the last year on Autumn Square, 22-23. That was asked in the board meeting, and I didn't have a sheet. So when I did this, and then you'll see our other capital. But I just give that for y'all to have information on what debt was still outstanding, how many years there was on it, and everything.
We pay for Autumn Square 100% with
Yes.
revenues produced by the property, right? Okay.
And I think that's the big thing because where they've been paying us rent and we've been using that money now to pay it off. Now what we get is going to be all profit, correct? It'll be profit instead of paying off.
That'll be.
Which will
your-
be-
That'll be revenue that won't be obligated to debt.
Exactly.
So the total debt for the county is $39,621.95, right? Are all our debts added together? And we're allowed to go up if we wanted to. If we were crazy, we could go up to 368 million, right?
Go up to 339,
368,701.
yeah, that last sheet shows what we can go up to.
Okay. What's the number? Make sure I'm looking at the,
368,701,034.
yeah, mm-hmm.
Where is the, on this page, where's the total debt owed?
On page 9 at the bottom.
Page
Oh,
9,
9, I'm on page 10.
with interest is $39,621.95.
That's the county's debt load now.
Yes.
So you can do a
Okay.
percentage of what we're authorized to do, which I think the LGC, is that who authorizes us to go up to that amount, that 368?
Yes,
They-
the
we-
statute allows you to do 8%.
Yeah. So technically, we could go up to that.
Assessed value, that's in,
Okay.
But technically, we could do that. You can do a percentage comparison of what we're actually debt is compared to what we could do, which I think would tell you that we're conservative in our debt at this point,
I also
compared to
have,
some people. I mean,
I also have on there what Moody's and Standard and Poor has us rated. And they've not changed our rating since 2013, but I've not been contacted by them to do the update. If you should have to do GO bonds, you would have to. That rating, the better it is, the better the rate is on your bonds.
What's the next thing that'll come off after the, so the Autumn Square's coming off this year, and then what will be the next thing that will be paid for?
The pods that we did for Nancy Reynolds.
the rest of them all have 5 or
got
6
2
more years.
on
Yeah.
it.
Okay,
And the rest of them's got like 8 years, I think it was, when I was working on the budget the other day. 6 and 8 years, and then your USDA's your long one.
yeah,
SDA in the community, the jail, they allow us to do 40-year loans.
yeah.
Help our
If you wanted
cash
to
flow.
pay extra on that USDA, you're not penalized. I mean, that's just something the board has the ability to do.
That was one thing that when we went into that Sheriff Marshall at the time told us that we would be able to pay that by getting,
We, at this moment, Eric Cole, the captain, his title, he has assured me that we will get the money to pay. So he's short of staff over there and they're not able to keep.
For this year, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
So the jail is pretty much self-sufficient. It's
Yeah,
paying for
they're-
itself, for sure.
That's the swinging door right now. That's what I call it. They're in and they work 2 or 3 weeks and they're out. It's just a position that's not, like Joyce always said, that that's something he wanted to do because you're confined in there with them.
Yeah, I get it.
It takes a person that don't mind that. I
Mhm.
wouldn't want to do it.
Big grown-up babysitter.
And then also, I enclosed the fund balance that Shannon had asked me to get this morning. That's all I have, unless you have some questions.
Is the fund balance, is this about the same amount we've been spending each year on the estimate for fund balance versus
Yeah, about,
appropriated?
yes.
About the same, okay.
And like I said, that can change, they can go up or down, or that's just February the 16th was the snapshot I took.
Okay. All right. Sorry. All right. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Okay.
We need to jump into the current
Yeah,
projects and update
That'd be
on that a
great.
little bit, and then we can stop for questions.
all right.
One thing I do have for you that I asked Mark Lacey with LKC, who is the engineering firm that's working on that ongoing water project, I asked him to provide us an update on that, so he gave me a one-pager of where they're at with everything. If you want to pass those down, it's just one
All right.
sheet. Pretty much they're right on schedule with where he expects to be right now, but that'll give you a good synopsis of what they're looking at right now, what's been completed and what they're waiting on. So there's really nothing else that needs to happen with that right now. They're just waiting on certain things to take place to be able to finalize everything. But that's going right along with schedule. The animal shelter that several of you mentioned, you know, several meetings back, we talked about the animal shelter a little bit, had an estimate from Harry Peterson on what it would cost to build about a 5,000 square foot animal shelter. He gave that price of about 1.2 to 1.5. And after that, you all had us establish an animal shelter study group. We established that, and you all helped us get those members appointed to that committee. We've been meeting with that group a few times. We have another meeting scheduled March the 10th. We've made a lot of good progress on that group as far as coming up with things people would like to see, getting numbers from the animal shelter. We actually have talked to other counties, sort of like our size, with their shelter needs and what they are seeing moving forward. Amber and Glenda and I went and visited a shelter in Caldwell County that's currently being constructed with a group that we had spoken to and got some information from them on what they were building and what size they were going from. They actually provided us with all of their plans and all of their RFPs they received back, just as a very nice gesture for us to be able to look through that with our group. So we're looking into that a lot and are still meeting with that group. So I hope to have something to present to you soon on that, as far as the recommendation from that group on the size of that shelter, where the group would like to see it located. Definitely, right now, the opinion's swinging of not having it located where it's currently at. There's not really good space for building over there, and it's just not in a good location for people to visit there, along with the site that it's at.
The one you went and looked at, was it about the same size of what we were looking at?
What they're building, they currently have a 5,000 square foot shelter. We'd like to have the shelter that they're leaving. They're building a 10,000 square foot shelter, but their intake of animals was less than ours as far as like what they actually took in last year. So, but they were building a lot of extra space for keeping animals. Like we have that issue we run into here a lot, where we have to keep animals in, combination with court cases, things like that. They're building a lot, and they're going to keep their old facility as a shelter too, for quarantines, things like that, for keeping animals as part of seizures until court cases are complete. So they were really upgrading their space, and they were using a shelter planners group that we've talked to a little bit with this group as well, and they gave us a little bit of feedback on that too. So it was a good visit and nice to see their space. We had a visit scheduled in Watauga, but they had a COVID outbreak and we didn't get to do that visit. But we've also talked and emailed back and forth with a lot of different shelters and got a lot of good info. So we're working on that pretty hard with that group and hoping to bring you some things back soon on that. So that's part of on our radar big time.
That was Caswell you were at?
Caldwell.
Caldwell, okay.
Caldwell. They were the one shelter that we could find that's currently building a shelter, and that was using a group that we had reached out to and talked to. So we thought they would be a good one to visit and try to get their feedback on what they liked so far about the process, what they didn't like, and really we're not expecting them to give us their entire set of plans and all their work that they have done completed for that so far, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
So on that, we got to actually take a walk through their, what they're building and their old shelter. And that number that Perry gave us months back for the 5,000 square foot, 1.2, 1.5, I don't estimate that'll go down. I hope it doesn't go up when we really start to look at it a little more seriously, but I don't estimate it going down. The green box sites, of course, that's been going on for a couple different budget cycles. I know you all approved to redo those sites, maybe even relocate them. A couple budgets back, appropriating about $350 for each site, which was going to be financed. All the sort of trials and tribulations that have come with relocating those sites, that we've still not gotten those done because we haven't found a good site to relocate to, which took us back to the drawing board a little bit on that, especially with Walnut Cove, because it seems to have the most issues with overcrowding and issues with traffic problems. Stuart and I talked with Perry. Perry went back and took a second look at that, has come up with some pretty good ideas, and he'll have some plans pretty soon to show us and show you all on doing exactly what we need to do in that site to make it work there. And making a circle in and out of there with a defined entry and exit, not all that congestion coming in and out of the same space. For hopefully at or under the amount that we had previously talked about. And there's some funding that I'll mention to you. We'll talk about it again a little later. We actually were surprised and got a little more money from the state budget that was approved for us for capital projects of any kind. Anything ongoing, anything we want to build, remodel, and it's for $250,000. And one thing that we thought of right away when we saw that and got it was that, might be something we might consider. We have to give them a plan soon on that and what to do with that funding. Might be a good thing to do with that green box site in Walnut Cove as a way to do that. Pinnacle, Stuart's still been looking at that one along with Perry. That one's still a little bit up in the air. We haven't come up with any kind of plan on that one yet, other than maybe he wants to put a compactor at that site, just like he wants to put it on at Cove. That would help a little bit with some of the in and out of there as far as the visits. They wouldn't go as often to empty the boxes. But as far as the traffic pattern there, not yet, and nothing from DOT on that yet either. But we've not forgotten it. We're certainly looking at it. Some projects that got completed this year, which were part of some budgets passed, were the EMS station in Walnut Cove, got completed, which is good. That's working well. The solid waste skill house at the transfer station got completed. We also put a new attendant building there. We didn't really realize the need for that till the new skill house building went in, that they needed a place for the people that actually work on the solid waste, on the green box side of that to be. So that got completed. The maintenance building up here on the hill got completed this year and got our public work folks a new space to work in, which is working out really nicely. We replaced the roof at the day reporting center at EMS building in Danbury, and the generator for the Pine Hall Medical Building's been ordered, and as soon as that arrives, it'll get installed, and they're projected May 2022 for that. So that's part of some things that have been approved that are actually completed. So the ongoing with the animal shelter and the green box sites, we're certainly still working on those hard, and hope to bring something back to you soon on all of those. I think that's all I have for right now, and if you've got some other things or questions, just let me know and I'll try and...
Yeah, could you give us a summary of how the revenues are coming from the Pine Hall, people using the room there and the shelter, room in the shelter?
At the
Pine Hall facility.
Pine Hall Medical Center
Yeah.
facility.
Yeah, the community room and the shelter, that.
Revenues from that we intake.
Right now, they've
it's-
not been getting.
they've not been-
Last year, because of COVID, they didn't get nothing because they.
Also, nobody
had
used it.
meetings,
Right. There was a
And it
time when they
picked up
didn't allow.
some, but not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Now, don't worry about them. We'll look at it next year.
I don't think it's going to be much to speak of this time.
I always budget that, but, due to COVID, it just.
But before COVID, it was staying rented a lot, right?
It was
Get
rented
quite a bit.
very often.
Which
Pretty
should-
much every weekend, and looking
Yeah.
at renting it for daytime things too. But COVID kind of did away with that.
Okay,
So
don't worry about
I
it.
can look at those revenues.
yeah. Well, I don't think it'll be real large. They just
Well-
recently started renting it back out again.
I brought my book from last year, and looked at our debt service before I came over here, and really, the community college USDA 37 years and the jail USDA 38 years, and then everything else was under 10 years. And that was from my notebook that we got last year, and I'm looking at it on pages 11 and 12 from last year, because it showed the pods, the land for the school at Poplar Springs, Nancy Reynolds and Community College, it was 8 years remaining last year. QZAB and QZGAB at Poplar Springs and Southeastern, Lawsonville Elementary, and as you said, so I think really with the USDA, community college 37 and 38 for the jail, and the jail self-sustaining, I think we're in pretty good shape, personally,
Yeah.
when I first came over.
That was good.
And on that, the courthouse, we've been talking with Perry about the courthouse and working on that. We actually had a meeting the other day with one of the members of the Board of Elections, Mr. Pale and Jason Perry, and just went over some things, hashed out some ideas. We went back to Perry and talked a little bit about it. Stuart and Glenda and I and Amber were talking about it, trying to come up with a way to not relocate them if we possibly could. So we've got Perry, and he thinks he's found a way to do this, and we actually meet with Board of Elections again today at 3:30 to talk to them a little bit about some of the ideas that we're thinking of. We asked Perry, was there a way, using that empty lobby space, to expand some of those other offices out into that space for probation and some of those other offices that were being added, and leave a smaller lobby, leave Board of Elections where they are, but make them a entrance in and out that's separate from the courthouse. They would be part of the courthouse, but not part of the courthouse. it would be that they would enter and exit through a different building and have no access to get into the courthouse once they were inside that building. So that way, if public comes into that building, they would still have to, if they wanted to do other business in the courthouse, they would still have to come out and go through the security process just as the judges have ordered in that administrative order. But we're looking at that now as maybe impossible. We don't have a cost on that yet, but would not be nearly as costly as relocating. It would just merely be adding them an entrance and exit and do a little revamping in that office. So we're going to talk to them about that today when we meet with them and present that idea to them and see if they would be better with that than relocating. We went over some of the stresses that relocating would add to them as far as having everything in one location when they go out to start moving to election sites, wanting to be able to pick up everything from one location versus having some things stored here or there. So we're hoping that might be a solution that might be agreeable to all, but we'll update after we meet with them and see. We've just been trying to rack our brains a little bit on what we can do to accommodate them and not have to move them.
I think that sounds like a good solution.
So that might be our best. When you start talking things out with people like down there, you start to think of things that you wonder why you didn't think of in the beginning. So that was just one of those kind of light bulbs that went off, and we all said, okay, that might work. And so then we took it back to Perry, and he has agreed that he can probably make that design work.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get a little further discussion with them on that today. But
Sounds good.
that is one update on that.
Probably would be cheaper than what we would have had to have spent to remodel that building up on the hill for them. So just
Right,
to
and
add a outside entrance and then shut them off where they can't come into the courthouse.
Right.
They would have to go out and around.
Correct. That would be that because one of the things we were thinking in and relocating them was getting them away from the courthouse so they wouldn't be part of that security process because they're not really a courthouse function. So, but in doing this would take away that as well. They still have their own entrance and exit, not have to go through security to get to Board of Elections, but not having access to the courthouse either. So not in any way, not going along with that administrative order.
That wouldn't affect security then.
Yeah, so we'll see what the Board of Elections thinks about that, and then we can come back and talk about that a little more, and Perry can get that a little more well-defined once we know. We didn't want to have Perry do a lot of work on it until we get their feedback, but he did say it's doable. So, and I think that'll be more cost-effective.
We've got $2 million from the state that was earmarked for the courthouse.
Correct.
And he said the scope of the project was between 6.5 and 7.5.
Right. We had, in talking with Julia, probably do a not to exceed 8 million mark on that when we get to the point of
You
doing
won't
the
have
project
financing
ordinance.
costs to do the debt of the rest of it.
And you always want to have a little reserve for the things that happen that you don't expect. So we don't have to come back.
Okay.
Better to have money left over than ask for more.
What funds we have? 10 million for hospital, 2 million for the
Courthouse,
courthouse.
and then 250 for the Capitol, that was the extra one. And then there's that 18.5 that's flowing through DEQ for the water that's partially divided for the Danbury water. That's flowing all through the Water and Sewer Authority.
Also have to work on the hospital too, I would
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. So we've
How
got
long
to
we have to spend that money? Do you know? How long we have to spend that money, that 10 million?
2026 is the date they're giving on a lot of stuff, but they have, in some of the meetings that we've been in lately, they understand that starting those projects, there's no way for us sometimes with supply needs, demand, not being able to get the things. Some of the things we've sat through lately, and none of that's concrete yet, are looking like they're going to, once we're underway with those projects, there's going to be some leniency in those timelines once we're underway with projects. Because they understand some of those things are just not doable in that time frame.
So getting back to the water situation in Danbury, so what part of that project is the town of Danbury actually working on something with that too?
No, Water and Sewer Authority is looking into all that. Now, Stewart is, of course, the 8-point-something million that's earmarked for replacing and redoing all of these lines that keep the old lines in Danbury system. So he's, of course, talking with them about that, but it's really up to us to take care of that, or up to them to take care of that.
And that money is earmarked for that?
For that, yeah, it's 18-point-something together, but there's 8 million and something odd dollars that are earmarked just for the Danbury water. The other is for other expansion that we would have to have Stewart and Will Carter's working with them on that, with economic development, on working on that part of that as far as the water expansion. They've had some meetings with some of the other towns on that.
Okay.
Does that 8 million come to the Water and Sewer Authority or?
Remember, we
county?
talked about that water and sewer, it's earmarked for water and sewer authority. If we changed it to come to just county as Stokes, it'd have to take legislative action to do so, so.
My question is the Water and Sewer Authority gonna have to approve all that stuff we've had to have approved?
Right, and I asked that question to Stuart the other day to talk to John Hawkins about that, on who's receiving that, because we're not receiving it. It's
See,
flowing
I haven't
through-
heard anything either.
It's flowing through them. And all of our grants are flowing through NCOSBM, and that's coming through DEQ.
So we don't really have to put any of that in our budget, because that's not gonna flow through us.
No.
Gotcha.
And one thing that I do need to try to solidify a little bit, because we've submitted everything else that we need to receive our funds from the state directive grants, the 250, the 2 million, and the 10 million. The last piece that we're missing, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit over budget discussion to this, but you'll probably want to know a little bit about this as you go into budget discussion on the state grant funding projects, is we have to define sort of a preliminary objective for those, and expected results, performance measures, all of that, to be able to submit to receive our funding for that. I've questioned the state on that. They said they understand that it's very, very preliminary. They just need us to make some really good, educated guesses on some of that, pretty much on budget numbers, on what it's gonna cost, break it down for them, and give them sort of our, I just pretty much need feedback from you all on that $250,000, how you'd like to see that spent, the 10 million on the hospital as well, and then of course the 2 million on the courthouse is a little easier, I think, because if we go with what's being proposed, I can do that and get pretty good numbers on that one, because we have a sort of proposed plan on that. But I don't have a lot of solid things for the hospital money as far as solid projects, because some of that's changed a little bit, and I don't have anything solid on the 250, unless you all are okay with us moving forward with trying to use that funding to redo the green box item on a cove.
Well, I'm probably putting myself out on the limb here, but I'd like to see that 250 go to the green box.
I feel like that's a really needed
Now,
project.
maybe the only one of the 5, and I understand that that's the way it goes, that's fine, but that's me.
Well,
Just one person saying it.
well, I don't have a problem with that because it's been in the budget and not been taken care of. As far as the Pinnacle site goes, I don't feel like we have a plan yet
Right.
to use it for that, even though we really need DOT's help in possibly the road. I think we can rework some things in there to make it better and to utilize it better, but we really need DOT to look and do some type of study up there about that safety measures out on that road, and if there could be a turning lane added, or what measures could make it safer to get in and out of there. And I definitely think there could be some signage of, and that's in their, there's nothing we can do about that. They need to do that. So to make it safer, to maybe slow people down coming down that hill, to warn people. They have all kinds of flashing signs they put out everywhere. And I don't know if you could, have you talked to Craig Sizemore about
I'll
that?
reach back out. I've been talking to DOT a lot this last couple of weeks. They've
Yeah.
been calling about all kinds of stuff, so I've got a lot of
Yeah.
good, I talked to Pat Ivy yesterday. I can reach back out to them and see what we can do about that Pinnacle.
Because
site.
that may be something that wouldn't take a whole lot of money, but that DOT could help us out on there. But
For safety.
for the Walnut Cove site, it sounds like that amount of money is about what we would need to fix that.
And if it didn't cover what Stuart's wanting to do with the compactors, we could always put those in the budget and finance them with the equipment, if that was agreeable to you all, so we could maybe at least get the actual structural part of that done, and to find that entry and exit down there. But what Perry's working on so far, I think you're gonna like. It looks nice.
Y'all are saying 250K for Walnut Cove? I'm good with that too.
If I present that to the state as our Appendix A for the scope of work, the objective, and our results that we're expecting from that, I can do some budget numbers on that.
Okay.
I would need to
Well, see, one thing, you know, we had planned on both the Walnut Cove and the Pinnacle. And then after all the commissioners pretty much went up and looked at the Pinnacle, new proposed Pinnacle site, and then we had several of our citizens come and speak on the Pinnacle site. I think the new is not the, we all pretty much, I think, decided that wasn't the way to go. It was to work on the one we have presently doing with DOT South. Because I know Wayne knows, and I think Sonia and probably Rick and Andy all went up to Pinnacle.
Yeah.
I walked that land twice, went up there 2 times, walked it, and I just don't think that's, I don't think that's a viable option.
No, I think we've already put it on the
Pretty much
market.
said
Yeah, we're not doing it.
we sort of,
No, we put it up for sale.
we sort
That
of
Pinnacle
put that
land is
out.
for sale on the website, we posted it, so it's for
So
sale.
that'll be revenues coming back in.
Will we have to purchase land over to Walnut Cove site? Okay.
Not for this plan.
Okay.
No. It would, the only inconvenience is gonna be, it will have to temporarily shut down while the work's done. So they'll add some green box sites at some other locations that are feasible to drive to from Walnut Cove, like over at, at the landfill at Sizemore, maybe some at Pine Hall, what they can add to try to absorb that from there. We looked at some temporary site options, but temporary site options are complicated too. Then you gotta build some kind of structure
Yeah,
around them.
that
All
doesn't
that.
seem viable.
And if we can be ready to go and just execute it and hopefully get it done in a matter of a few months, it
Right.
will be an inconvenience, but I think the bigger picture is it won't be relocated. It's gonna be in the same location. It'll be better when it's open. I think people will be happy with that.
Surely people will understand long enough to get it done, and that we're trying to make it better for them.
Right.
Yeah,
There's no way around not closing it temporarily once the work is to start.
I wouldn't count out seeing a few bags of trash sitting at the gate though.
No, you're right on that one.
On the 10 million, I'd like to see a replacement hospital and emergency room in King. A new emergency room, new building, new emergency facility. Can you get, information like from what Perry's already done to put in your,
Yeah, we
you
can
have
get
to
more.
send or
Yeah,
what?
we can get more defined with him on dollar amounts, and like I say, I verified with the state, because I said, there's just no way for us to give you exact figures that are not going to change, or even exact projects that aren't gonna change as it's ongoing. And they emailed back and said they understood that, if we could just try to get as much information as we could to them, but Perry can help with that too, because he's, looked into some of that, so we can look at that with him.
How much more do you have to put with what you've already sent in to?
Well,
for that?
and what we sent in is just a tentative for them to look over and say, what else do we have to give you right now, since we don't have a well-defined project. So
Okay.
what we'll have to put is, they really are okay with the objective and the expected result and even the performance measures. They just want more numbers on expenses, services and contract expenses, estimates on that. Goods, administrative expenses, which are tough because we don't have a project yet. We don't have a defined project, but they just want good guesstimates on that.
The USDA guy's been involved in it too, so you might could get info from him.
so what happens if somebody, because of it being in the budget that Kyle put in there to waive that certificate of need for 3 years, if somebody, one of the, say, big players stepped up and wanted to build a hospital in King, what would, that would change. We obviously would not need a 24/7 emergency room
Right.
there anymore.
And really what I'm having to address here is that $10 million of grant money and give a proposed thing. So, so far what I've added into them is that, what's being done to look at the hospital in Danbury, what's being done to look at medical needs throughout the county. And that I did add a note in there to them that, the largest municipality had adopted, I think you all got a copy, or I'll give you one of that resolution adopted from the City of Kings Council on requesting some of that funding be used there.
I've got an email with that in it, but do you have a hard copy?
I do. So I wanted to add that into the appendix because I wanted to be sure that we were actually addressing that in case something did happen like that. Some of that, some of that could be used for that. That's a hard copy of that, just in case.
All right.
Because typically when you apply for grant funding, you've already got a pretty defined project with hard numbers, lots of things that you are ready to act on. This is different because this is funding that's coming to us that knew about it a little ahead, but we're not really quite prepared yet as far as for executing the actual projects.
All right.
You just want to draft something? Do we need to look at it, or
You don't have to. I talked to the lady there. She said the only thing we're doing right now is we've gotten them everything else that we have to get our funding other than this scope of work with the objective, expected results, performance measures, and the budget numbers. Is until we get that to them, we won't get our state money. It's not, we will get it. It's not gonna go away, but we'll get it. But it's just delaying that. So we can draft something so we pretty much just want the commissioners' guidelines on what they want to see in those. Like what would be, if you were just to tell me what your objective would be to spend the $10 million on the hospital, what would you want me to say to that?
Well,
As far as,
see, the thing, you gotta keep that word in there as you ask about 10 million for the hospital, but it keeps saying, whereas 10 million was earmarked recently adopted state budget for new construction.
right, citing
Well,
planning.
everything I've been told, it's not for renovation,
Right,
it's for new construction, correct?
right.
Stokes County.
it has some specific guidance like site planning and things like that in there? You just play those words back to them, I guess. With
Yeah.
some,
I just think you got to keep it broad. I mean, pretty
In
broad.
the draft that I sent to the state on the objective for the hospital funds, I put to provide a medical or medical facilities in Stokes County to meet the need of the citizens to replace the current facility located in Danbury or to work in connection with this facility as the funding is solely for siting and building a new facility and cannot be used for remodeling the current one, because that's pretty much what it states in the budget. And I noted that, our results were to provide good medical care for the citizens of Stokes County with the funding being used to achieve that, and that we'd use the same measures as we do for all projects and gain an approval from the Board of Commissioners using our normal uniform guidance, that we have a hospital board that oversees the current hospital, and then there's the formed hospital operations committee that's been tasked with deciding the type of medical care needed in Stokes County. That they've been holding numerous town hall meetings and receiving feedback from citizens on what they believe healthcare looks like in our rural area, and that I noted that largest municipality has adopted that resolution requesting that our board consider using some of the funding to build a 24-hour medical facility in that area while keeping a facility in the northern end of the county. And they were really okay with that wording as far as the state. If you all were okay with that, the main thing I need to do is just put some projected numbers in that as far as expenses, services and contract expenses, all that, to try to sort of give them something on that.
one thing it may be good to wicker in there if you can is the fact that if we do a replacement hospital up here, the one in King, the 24-hour emergency room is hospital-based as well under that hospital. And then the Pine Hall mention something about that it's tied in with all this to give them a total understanding of
What it looks like.
what the hospital is.
And like I say, the courthouse one is, we pretty much are going to be using to renovate and add an addition to our existing courthouse, using the $2 million in grant funding towards the estimated $7 million cost of the entire project. All they really want to know is about the $2 million that they're providing to us. If we want to spend an additional $5.5 million, that doesn't concern them, but it would be part of the overall project. So that's, and I can get numbers relatively easy on that. So if the board's in agreement on those being how the money is spent, and agreement on the 250 on the Wanna Cove site, I can get finished up with those and get the numbers and try to get those submitted so we can actually receive our funding.
That sounds
And
good.
then I would just pretty much, just like we did with the CARES Act funding, in the beginning, we had to do this whole large document that said how we were gonna spend that money and divide it out by how we, like, what we would spend it on. And then every time we changed how we did that, I had to amend that and send that back to them as far, and Tracy helped me a lot with that. And then also did monthly updates on that with them as far as monthly reporting. This would work the same way. As we make changes, we would just notify them that we're changing that, the piece of that, as long as we update them.
Are they gonna send the total amounts to you once you do that, once you get the paperwork in?
Once we, I believe so, once we get this once we get this submitted, that's our last piece, then we receive our funding.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
We don't need to
We have to
we don't have
execute
to
it.
vote on any.
no, I just need a general
Okay.
consensus, and what
Gotcha.
they'll send us a contract, on it that we can look over, that will give all those details, Commissioner Morris, of then how the funding would flow.
Okay.
It's once we get our contract back from them, once we give them this document, satisfied to what they want.
Sounds good.
I think this is the first time in history we've ever had this much funding coming in at one time from so many different places.
I know,
There's
it's
a lot of,
to keep up with.
There is. And
A lot
I
of
mean,
reporting requirements.
yeah, there's a lot of reporting requirements. And I mean, we had, like I said, we had a pretty good practice with the CARES Act funding. That was a good practice run. This is going to be a whole nother ballgame. So,
You got the American Rescue funds.
correct. That's a different pot of money. That's American Rescue that we've already gotten 4.4 of.
Let me ask you, this might be part of the budget discussion we're getting into, but, so we're, the 8.8, we know we're gonna use some of that for broadband, but we're also not sure what this kind of state grant money we're gonna get.
That is something I have about that. So we have a meeting tomorrow at 5:30 with the broadband committee that you all approved at your last meeting. That'll be here tomorrow. And we have some other information on that as far as looking into what DIT is requiring. So we can get up to $4 million, a whole $4 million for just Stokes County from that DIT, from that grant money. We can use our ARPA funds that we have that are going to be the 8.8 as matching funds towards that. The percentage that we have to match, and the provider would do us put some money in that as well. But those percentages are based on a system that once we submit our grant application, or once our provider submits our grant application to DIT for that funding, they do a sort of percentage on that will determine what our portion would be, what our match would be. Match, even if we get the whole $4 million, our match might not be $4 million. It might be a small percentage of that, and then the provider does a percentage of that. But there's a formula that they're using to determine what our match will be based on that. But we can use the ARPA funds for that. Your match is less, I think, if you don't use total ARPA funds. If you use some county funds, it's like 15% basis of 25. But I'm not sure why you would use the county funds when you have $8.8 million sitting there. Even if it is a larger percentage, you have to use up your ARPA funds, because there were, in the beginning of getting this 8.8, there were so many projects that were spinning through, like water, but now that's been taken care of by the 18 million that's coming through. We're getting, the hospital funding. A lot of that has alleviated a lot of the other stresses that were going to be coming with our budget cycle and big capital.
That would be my other question. So if we need to possibly earmark or kind of save the 4 million to match just in case or whatever, then do we need to, as part of our budget discussions, decide how we want to spend the other ARP funding?
There's a grant ordinance that the board has already approved for the $8 million. It's all unassigned right now. When y'all start assigning that, a big budget, a grant ordinance amendment has to be done
Okay,
to assign that to, to those projects.
gotcha. Okay,
But we don't anticipate you using more than 4 million from the ARPA funds, because even if you get the maximum of 4 million from the state money, your match is not going to be more than $4 million.
right.
So you're going to have basically 4.8, because you have 8.8 sitting there. So 4 million is just allocated towards that.
I think we need to do that, yeah.
Yeah.
So some other things.
Budget it to something.
And I don't
Yeah.
know how.
Shannon, you said y'all meeting tomorrow, the broadband committee. Y'all meet, your first meeting is tomorrow.
It is.
You can start setting up some parameters and things that you want to go through. Did you tell me that had to be done by April 4th?
April 4th is when the application deadline is to NCDIT for the grant application.
You've got a little over a month.
But yeah, and we need to act fast, so that may be a long meeting tomorrow, because, and really and truly, we're a little ahead, because what that broadband committee was originally talked about doing is to pretty much decide what the needs are of the county, where they like to see, where they think the unserved areas are, what good broadband looks like to them. But we already have an RFP process that's finished and completed. We have bids, so we're ready to pick a provider and go. We really need to pick a provider because we need that provider to apply on our behalf for this grant funds.
So that committee needs to look at those RFPs or not?
We're in conversation with Ty about that. Amber made a visit to Ty's office yesterday, because Ty's on that committee as well.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's a little bit of, some of that information in those bids is considered confidential, marked in there, and we want to be sure with Ty on what information we can actually give specifics on from that. Because it's not really, the definition of what that committee should be doesn't really involve them even looking at the RFPs. It was really to get to the point to send out an RFP, but it is a requirement to do the broadband committee. So we're just a little bit ahead because we already have it.
Though, is the broadband committee, which was approved by the commissioners, y'all meet, let's say y'all meet tomorrow. Is this an allowable thing? Are y'all able to then, somebody on the committee go out and discuss it with others, or is this supposed to be kept within your committee and not be discussed with people in the community?
Did you discuss that with Ty yesterday about the non-disclosures?
Yeah, a little bit. We were talking about different options, and we wanted to see what was legal as far as, are we allowed to show them the whole RFP, including the confidential information, as long as they sign some kind of NDA agreement, and we take up all the materials, I guess, that we pass out to them, or what that could look like. Maybe even if we could just pass out the copies of the RFP with the redacted information that's confidential. But I've presented a couple options to Ty, and he's going to get me an answer about his recommendation.
He is going to let you know if it's like the NDA, non-disclosure agreement. He's going to have it laid out for y'all.
Right, yeah. And we presented him with copies of the RFP as our attorney, so he could look at those, and so that would be able to inform his decision and let us know what he thought.
We want to give the community as much information as we can, but we don't want to give them information that they're not supposed to have. And we wanted to check on the legality of that, and Glenn said that was a good idea as well, to check with him and be sure what's legal, what's not.
Is Glenn coming to your meeting?
He's going to come in an advisory capacity. He'll be here though.
I think all the proposals will eventually become public, except for the proprietary information
Yeah.
later on, but that will never be public. Most likely, I
And the
wouldn't
general,
think.
general statute states on that is, once the bid's awarded, that award, the one that it's awarded to is public. The others, no,
Okay.
because their information's not.
So basically, we have to have a provider picked, and by April 4th, have our application for the state funds submitted.
So we may very well have,
Because the provider's the one that has to do the
Has to do it.
application to the state.
Okay.
So we have to pick
So-
our provider, and they have to go in with us.
It needs to be a few weeks before April 4th.
correct, which we're short on time, which is why we've luckily got that meeting scheduled tomorrow. Hopefully we can come out with some good.
So we have, a couple of board meetings before then.
That provider is going to need, I would say at the latest, your first meeting in March is March the 8th, or March the 14th. Yes. I'd say no later than March 14th, we need to have a defined provider, because that provider is going to need at least a couple of weeks to submit that application
Right.
for funding.
Okay, so you may have to have a couple, 2 or 3 meetings with that committee before March 14th then.
Yeah.
Those proposals should have analyzed all the needs of the county, the unserved and all that as part of the proposals.
Amber and Glenda and I have been going through them pretty extensively, and we've identified a lot of good things in the proposals. So
Good deal. So that information will be stuff that committee would consider.
right, whatever's not confidential. Unless
Right.
Ty comes up and says that we can, but we're just trying to check all the legal boxes.
Yeah,
on that, make sure
definitely.
we don't ever want to disclose
Right.
anybody's proprietary information on that. So
And then what's the timeline after we submit that application before we know what kind of money we're gonna get? Don't know.
I don't have an answer for that one. No. I don't know what their
It could be
turnaround
up to
is.
4 million.
4 million is the max.
Okay.
They got 500 million, right?
Yeah, there is the great grant, which is the 4 million, and then there is the CAB award, which we don't have to apply for that. That is just something that, let's say we get 2.7 in the great grant, and then they look and see that we still have a good amount of unserved or underserved areas, we might be able to pick up an additional 1.3 under the CAB part of it, that we won't have to apply for. That would just come directly through NCDOT, deciding who would get those awards. And that's what the additional funding is there for.
It could be just a little while before we know
But I
exactly.
think you're secure in just, if we figure no more than 4 million out of our ARPA funds here, you're still left with 4.8 unassigned grant funds.
So you know what I think, and this is all, it's on topic, but not part of budget discussion, but part of the rub with this whole broadband thing is there is a misconception that it's going to be free. People, honestly, are people who really don't understand they have to pay for this service. When we talk about providing broadband in their area, I think some people have the misconception that they're not going to have to pay for it. I know, exactly.
We're providing access to broadband.
Right.
There
Right.
are some in a couple of the proposals, this is not proprietary, but in a couple of them, there are some options in there for lower income based when they, prices for household, things like that.
Right. I
They
just
do
saw
have
something on the news about that. The state has a program that especially households with children in school and needing access and lower income can apply for help.
Correct.
We need to make sure that people are aware of that.
Yeah. That's identified in some of the proposals that we received, knowing that that's a need.
I was putting it up there.
So I think,
Okay. So you went over the state grant funding projects.
I
Kinda skipped the budget
a little bit. Well, you
discussion.
kind of needed some of that information.
Yeah.
Before you really get into much other discussion. There's a lot, that's pretty much
Right.
everything that's going on. with that.
You say something about 18 million for water a while ago. Which is that?
It's coming directly to Stokes County Water and Sewer Authority.
Okay.
It's 18, I can't remember the exact dollar amount, because Stewart and Will and Water and Sewer, John Hawkins have all been meeting about that they're receiving in grant funds for $8 million and some odd dollars is for replacement of the Danbury water lines. And then the other portion is for expanding the water system that's actually being worked on now. It's, part of the water project, expanding that even further.
Who gave us that money? The federal government?
And it's coming through, Will actually spoke with Kyle ahead of time about trying to get that into the state budget. And so that money that was another one of those approvals in the state budget.
Okay.
It's state budget, not federal.
But it's being administered through DEQ, which is why we're not getting any of the information on it. It's all going to soil health.
We've got enough to keep up with.
Yes, we do.
So let them keep up with the water sewer.
And I've
part.
asked them about that, to be sure that are they getting the information on that? Because I want to be sure where that's flowing through. And we even talked about, did we need to go back and have that change to come directly to the county of Stokes instead of water and sewer? But I think from what they spoke with them about, that would take a lot of time because that's a legislative thing to have something changed in that. And they're already finished with all the technical corrections.
Well, I don't have a problem with that as long as it gets done.
Stewart is really involved in that process, as is Will. So either of them could give you a lot more information on that 18 million. They're dealing with that.
So you want us to get into the actual budget discussion?
Yeah, whatever you all want to discuss. If you've got questions about all the information that we've thrown at you too, as far as this is concerned. And I want to make sure that I'm getting a clear understanding. We made notes about what your top priorities are and all that. So we've got a good feeling for that. But I just want to be sure too that you all are in a consensus of what we could submit to the state for the grant funding. And I think I've got a pretty good feel for that, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken.
What else do you need from us to go do the budget then? Anything specific?
Unless you all, you have that other meeting scheduled on March the 1st at 11, and I made a list of the things that you all were asking us to try and get at some point. I don't know if you want to do that as part of another budget meeting, or if you just want that information as far as like the turnover report, looking at that money between the schools and us, the COVID funds, and those accounting expenditures from there. Rate comparisons on taxes. Is that something you want us to try to gather, and you want to go ahead and plan to have this meeting on March the 1st? And we give you that information. Does that help you all decide anything that you need to decide?
I don't particularly feel like I would need that to make any, I mean, I think we do need that information going into the budget cycle.
And we can have all that together and find it.
We don't have to have a meeting to get it, I don't think.
Right,
We can get that to them.
right.
Yeah, we can just send that out.
That'd be
Y'all
good.
want us to meet again.
Yeah, we don't have to meet, I don't think.
I don't particularly need, I've got a good picture, I think,
Yeah.
and you do too, and I think of what you want to see and don't want to see, so that we can start, and then we're gonna get budget packets out to department heads soon.
Yeah, can I ask, I send out an email when I electronically send out the budget packets. And when I've been working on this salary figures, which I got it done, now I'm plugging it in. And Lisa and Tracy has been working on the other part of the forms. We just gotta check them, but, in the email that I'm gonna be sending with this, I'm gonna tell them no tax increase, needs not wants. Fuel is a question mark, and give a separate listing of capital outlay requests for the next 3 years. Is that kind of what? And I thought of another thing. What was it?
We've been doing 3 or 5 year capitals.
We hadn't been doing either one, but we can start back up doing it.
But we did have the school system providing us a 5-year capital plan,
Yeah,
so we probably
they
should do
usually
the
do
same,
that.
whatever we make them do.
Well, you know,
Well,
you
I
have
can do
that,
5, I mean.
as far as for, this wasn't the department budgets per se, but you have that building study that Perry completed, but it didn't really give you a defined timeline in it on what you should do in the next 5 years. We pretty much just been acting to, like, we needed the roof really badly down at the DRC EMS building, so it got replaced this year in the roofs. You know, it might be nice to look at maybe putting that in time order of what, for our budget purposes, but for department heads, we've not really ever requested them to
No,
submit.
but
Like
if they're
for-
gonna need, like,
Well, like
EMS is
911
gonna need 10 defibrillators.
Right.
Okay, when are you gonna need those? That's kind of what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I think it's realistic to have them plan ahead, to think long-term, 3 to 5 years down the road of what their needs are gonna
Those are
be.
big ticket items.
They are, or like a couple years ago when we got hit with, I think
Stretchers.
that was the 911, those radios, was like $275,000 that came up in like January. So if we know that's gonna be coming down the line,
Right.
plan for it.
Yeah.
I would like to get that capital plan for the school too, like, I think they're already doing it.
Yeah, I think so, and like I said, they've gotta look at their numbers and make some tough decisions, and that's gonna impact what they may ask of us.
And the other question I thought of in the discussion going around, talking about fuel, we used to put in a fuel contingency account, and due to the gas prices right now, you don't know if they're going up or down, up and down. Do y'all want to see that contingency put back into contingency, and if we don't use it, we don't use it, but it would have something, we used to put it out there just in case we needed it, instead of having to go find the money here and there. But if we didn't use it, then it just goes back. I mean, it's just, I thought about that and talking about the fuel, that we want to see that put back in there. I think we used to put 45,000 or 50 in there. I mean, you're not talking about a whole lot, but
Yeah,
I had to up, if you seen on that
Yeah.
big budget amendment, I had to up the larger departments, fuel, all those supplies, because of the cost.
right,
You know, we was looking at last year's figures.
right.
Very different.
Yeah.
All the stuff on
$2.
right now, better be better off just gonna be prepared just to have it just in case.
Yes.
I don't see anything going down.
I don't either.
What fuel price you gonna budget this year, y'all decided? Per gallon?
No, we haven't talked about it yet.
Budget about $6 a gallon.
You're on the side of the high, do an estimate of the year, I guess, and do an average. So,
Yeah, it's gonna probably go up.
That's how I kind of did the estimate of what they might need. And that big budget amendment was what they've used so far this year. They looked at July through January, I think.
yeah. I think we'd be safe with $4, but I don't know if that's, I mean, that's, who knows.
Yeah.
But no, but I mean, unless there's anything else that you all specifically want for us to get you as far as that, I think we're good on as far as budget planning. We've gotten a good feel for what you want to see in the budget and don't want to see, and notes about that. So I don't see a need for the other budget goals meeting
Well,
unless
if we don't, there's probably not gonna be that much additional information that we're gonna have by then, till we get information from the school system and your department heads and things like that.
we didn't have the additional meeting last year either. We just put it on there just in case, but we didn't need it last year. So
There you
What
go.
about contingency funding, the same amount, 100,000 or something?
Yeah, I've been doing 125, 150.
Okay.
And then the leave contingency is where we pay all people. And,
How much you got in that, or you putting?
I think we've been putting 125 in
Yeah,
that.
okay.
We might use all that up before June 30th, or we might use all before June 30th. I'm sorry, I still, and,
Julie's retiring.
yeah. Because I always go look before I give it to the departments to make sure they're not gonna have savings in their salaries. So some departments don't get money when we pay all people because I think they're gonna have savings. You know, if they've had lapsed salaries where they've not hired anybody, then
Right.
you don't need to put money in there.
What's, as far as like, openings, job openings, or percentage of, I mean, how many vacancies, I guess, percentage-wise, do you think we have right now? Not many.
There's not many vacancies at all. EMS is fully staffed, which is.
Yeah, EMS fully staffed,
Huge
but
deal.
DSS is not, and the jail's not. Well, I don't know, DSS may be close to it.
They had
She
some
may have 2 or
retirements
3,
and
yeah.
some, which causes that trickle down effect of people moving.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But there's not that, a couple of openings maybe. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think they got that many back there on the board, and the jail's got, I think, 6 right now.
Yeah, the jails.
Openings?
Yeah.
Yeah, everything else is pretty
Either
well
we're having to
staffed.
pay full-timers time and a half, to keep the positions
We
filled.
need a big
Somebody's working a lot of
We're just
overtime.
having to
news
do
article about
something
that,
to
to,
do, because they've not got a whole lot of part-timers either.
the ad in the paper or something.
Which that's not just a problem here, that's a problem
Everywhere.
That's a
everywhere.
problem.
So
all the
The
jails.
state.
Yeah.
jails, businesses, I
Guilford
mean, everybody,
County
it's,
has it.
Right.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I mean, which is why I point out the EMS fully staffed.
I was gonna
Because
say,
everywhere
Well,
is
like,
not staffed with
Yeah.
EMS.
you watch the news, watch Fox 8 or Channel 12, and about once every 2 weeks, the EMS is coming on saying, we're short-staffed, we need people. We've got training, school settings for people that's interested in it, and it's on all the time. And that's why I know we are in good shape with EMS.
And our guys have started carrying whole blood.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Yeah.
Sent that out. Yeah, that's a big deal. That's
Oh,
not
yeah.
something that happens hardly anywhere, so.
matter of fact, how many counties in North Carolina even do that?
I think
None, we're the only one?
Maybe
Brendan named one other
One.
one. I think
One other
Surrey
county.
just started, and
Yeah.
us, I think we're like the 2 of them now. And I mean, nationwide, there's only just a handful.
Yes.
So it's a big deal. So, big deal.
I'd be proud of it right there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. that
They're
is
partnering
really
doing that
good.
with Atrium. They're letting
Right.
them, they go out and pick it up, keep it in that temperature controlled, and then when it gets close to the date where the blood has to be used, if we haven't used it back, they take it back there, and they're able to still use it. So it's not getting wasted in any way, but it's there if we need it, and with our, drive time to hospitals, it's nice depending on.
Awesome.
I commend Dr. Nelson for where our EMS is at right now.
Oh, yeah, it's great. They got good medical care, for sure.
I think you just triggered the thought, Shannon.
Medical director.
Whenever
In the
you
county.
putting in that 10 million, you might want to look at morgues too.
Yeah, that, Brandon has been talking about that.
You may need to expand it a little bit.
The morgue, and he even asked me about that, about the additional money in the ARPA funds, as if we could, use that for a morgue, because we are in great need of one.
Yeah, that's right.
It's been an issue this year with some of the local funeral homes are nice enough to let us use their spaces, but they've been out of space too, and they're not able to let us, so that's, yeah, Brandon's putting that in his.
Yes, I put something in there, yeah. We have 4 slots up here right now, is that it? Or in the hospital?
That's the only spot, yeah. That's
Oh, we
it.
got,
That's it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, he said he'd like to have at least 8.
Would be optimal. Okay. All right. Anything else?
No, this is good. I've got what I need if
All
everybody.
right. And I'll,
Make a motion to adjourn.
yep, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're canceling the March 1st.
He
Yeah, we'll
said,
cancel that one, yep.
No meeting on March 1st.
We
Thank you.
got
Dr. Nelson grew up in Sandy Ridge.
Oh, did it? I probably know him then. I just